Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. Today we're going to continue hearing evidence from those who were directly involved in the fire and its aftermath. Yes, Ms. Islam.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Can I call Mrs. El Ogbani, please?
Thank you. Good morning, Mrs. El Ogbani.
Good morning.
You're going to take the oath, I understand. There should be a copy of the Quran there within the covering. If you take that in your right hand and read the words on the screen, please.
I swear by Allah that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Now, please sit down and make yourself comfortable.
Sure, thank you.
Right?
Sorry.
Right. Yes, Ms. Islam.
Thank you for attending today to assist the inquiry with its investigations. By way of introduction, please keep your voice up so we can all hear you and so that the transcriber can hear and capture your answers clearly.
Sure.
It also helps not to nod or shake your head, but to say yes or no,
Sure.
so we can capture that on the transcript. If any of my questions are unclear, please tell me and I will ask them in a different way.
Sure.
And I appreciate that this may be a difficult process for you. If at any point you need a break, please let us know and we will accommodate that.
Okay, sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
You have made two statements to the inquiry.
Yeah.
The first statement is dated the 15th of May 2018, and if we could please go to IWS 0000844
Yeah.
and turn to page 11, please. Is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
And you've made a second statement to the inquiry dated the 29th of February 2020. If we could go to that, please, at IWS 00001746 and turn to page 22. Is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
Have you had the opportunity to read both of these statements recently?
Yes.
And can you confirm that the contents are true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, they are.
Thank you. Dealing now with some background matters. At the time of the fire, you lived at flat 85 on the 11th floor with your husband and 3 children. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And you had lived there since 2006. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you had grown up in the area because your parents lived in Testerton Walk. Is that right?
Yeah, I've grown up there. Yeah.
Thank you. And as such, is it right to say that you've had strong connections not only with the tower but the wider community?
Yes, because I lived in the area, so I lived there for about 20 years, 27 years. So I came to the UK when I was 15. So my childhood, my adolescence is in the area, in the community, and I've also worked in the community as well. So yeah,
Thank you.
That's my home. Thank you.
I'm now going to ask you some questions about the early hours on the 14th of June.
Yeah.
And we know from CCTV, which showed the times which residents left the building, that you exited the tower at about 1:28. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Once you had escaped the tower, how would you describe the scene?
Oh, it was really horrific, very stressful. When I left the tower, I was with my children and my husband. When we first opened the door, it was thick black smoke. So I thought initially when my friend called me and I said it was the fire was approaching my my floor. When I opened the door and I saw the thick black smoke, I thought, that's it, we're late, we're gonna die. So I'm a person who's very emotional, so I was panicking and starting to cry. And then my husband looks at me, he said, let's try again, just calm down so I don't affect the children as well. So yeah, we left the tower, we left the house that time. I had my neighbours, my Afghani neighbour was on the floor, on the corridor. So I presumed, I thought that he knew what's happening, that they're going to follow us. I mean, I did find out later on that he didn't made it. So, so when we escaped and we went downstairs, when we came out of the tower, we didn't know where to go because we never thought where was the meeting point where there was an emergency. So we just went out, and then I turned around to look at the fire. So it's like when you light up with a candle, it just was zooming up, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on? And then because we had the kids and we didn't know where to go, and my mum lives in Chesterton, which is like just 2 minutes away, like just had to take the stairs. I took my children, so we went to my mum's house. She wasn't there that evening. She was at my auntie's in Orpington, but my brother was there. So when he opened the door, bless him, his face was white. Because he could see the tower from my mum's balcony, and I think he was already out there. So when I opened, he was like, "Thank God you're here." So we rushed, we put my children, and then I came back out again, and then just to watch with the walkways.
Yeah.
So we didn't know where to go. Luckily, I had my parents. My parents' house was nearby, so I took the children there. But eventually, we did have to evacuate after as well.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned your brother. Did your brother live with your mother, with his wife and child?
Yeah, my brother was born in Chesterton, so he lived with my mum after he married as well, and he had a little baby with him at that time. So
And you've just touched on this, but is it right that you were evacuated from Chesterton Walk after about 20 minutes of you arriving there?
Yes, because what happened is when I went to my mum's house and I went out by the walkways, and there is a tower just as you come out of the doors of the Chesterton. So I stood there to watch what's going on, and there were police there as well, and the neighbours, and we could hear our neighbours, shouting for help. One of them was pulling the white sheet, so he wanted to calm down, and we were telling him, please don't do it. And then the police came, say 15, 20 minutes later, because they thought the building was going to collapse, so they wanted to evacuate everyone. So that was another evacuation I had to go through. So I went to my sister-in-law, said, just grab anything, and we need to leave. So by 1:45, we are by Silchester Road, if I'm not mistaken. So just there with the neighbours, everyone, not knowing where do we need to go, children, and the time to stop the eating because it was Ramadan and there was nothing. It's just chaotic. It was really chaotic.
And when you were outside, did you see any officials from the TMO or RBKC or anyone else providing information or signposting support?
You mean as I just came out of being evacuated from Chesterton?
Yes, so you're on the scene outside.
There was police cars everywhere. There was fire brigades and a lot of, the whole community. Everybody was out. There was a lot of cars. There was no one, even the police, there was no there to give us evidence or to give us help. The police were just there to evacuate people and get them as much as they can out of the area. So where are we going to go? We didn't, or who you're going to turn up to? So there was no one to. It was just basically the community or the neighbours telling us, let's go this way, let's go this way, let's go this way. But I had my friend nearby, so she's the one I end up going to because the children wanted the toilet. They didn't. Where are we going to go? We don't know. So that was my only place to go for that time.
Yeah. And you've just touched on this, and is it right that you arrived at your friend's house at about 2:30 in the morning?
Yes. We went from Chichester. I'd gone through Latimer Road Station. We saw a little girl, she was covered in aluminium. I think she might have been burned, with the fire escape, with the fire brigade man. And then as I passed the Latimer Station, I can look up the tower, and that's the side of where my flat is. And I've counted the floors, and actually I can see that there was fire on my sitting room at that time. So that was really, also just, saying thank God I left. I didn't stay, but even though it it was really difficult for the children to see. You think you're coming out of a horror film. It wasn't, you didn't know what to expect. And as you're passing by, met some of my dad's friend, gave us water or food for the children. And then end up going to Walmer Road. That's where my friend lives.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And is it right that you stayed at your friend's house and a bit later on in the morning at around 10 o'clock, you and your family went to the rugby club because you'd heard that there was support there for people to get help?
Yeah, I stayed at my friend's house, Mrs. Amina Lado. She's the one who actually called me on the night and told me to leave. So, I'll never forget that. But yeah, she opened her house for us at that night. The children were able to stay there. Me and her, we didn't sleep at all. We just kept watching through her balcony. And then also one of her neighbors is a Turkish family who had her sister and brother, Mrs. Masit, I think. They were still stuck in the building, so they haven't evacuated that day. So she was more stressed. So literally we went downstairs by the door and just sat on the street, like trying to calm her down and trying to see if there is anything we have. And that's where we heard that everybody will be going to the rugby club, which was a club that my children used for their support for education through their school. So I think that was the place, like a rest center for us to go. So yeah, I said to my friend, we'll go there for 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So just to see. Yeah.
And when you got to the rugby club, is it right that you wrote down your name and the names of your family on a board that was up on the wall with your flat number?
Yes, when we got there, there was a lot of us, a lot of survivors, some of the bereaved. I saw, the family of Al Wahhabis. They were looking for their loved ones. They didn't know whether their uncle has escaped or our neighbor. We don't know what happened. So we were told. We sat there, and then there was a long white sheet out where you go and put your name down on the flat. So just for people to know who had made it out, who hasn't. So yeah, just.
And did you understand this to be a list organised by the community rather than an official list by RBKC or the TMO?
Definitely, it was a list by the I think is it the rugby club. So yeah, there was no officials at that time, no one.
And in your statement, you say that you and your family were at the rugby club for over 12 hours that day.
Yeah.
Why were you there for such a long time on that day?
We were there because we didn't know where else to go. So, and that's the place where all of us, i.e. all of the survivors and bereaved, we were gathered there. We were there because we don't know where to go, so we were there to support each other, to find out what's going to happen next, or what is going to happen to us, where we're going to be, because we've got no home, nothing. We don't know what will happen. I had my children's school, Mr. Sellens, the head of school. He came and visited us in the afternoon with the school Senko and saw our children, because there were about 3, 4, 5 families within his school. So just to give us the support to the children, to say, they're there for us if we needed anything. There was no pressure for them to go back, because they were in the middle of studying and there were exams that were coming up. So it just was, we didn't know where to go. That was our place. So yeah.
And in the 12 hours that you say you were at the rugby club, as far as you were aware, was there anybody from RBKC or the TMO?
I personally haven't seen anyone from RBKC or TMO. I've only saw the staff of the rugby club, and there were no one with badges and stuff. There was only the police. They came because they just wanted to take our name down as well. I remember giving the name of Hashim family because my son's best friend was from Hashim family, and we didn't know whether he escaped or not. We heard so many rumors. Maybe he was stuck in a lift, or he has. So I gave the name of the Hashim family and their telephone number to see whether is there any do we know anything about them. So yeah.
And whilst you were at the rugby club during the day, how would
Yeah.
you describe the atmosphere there?
It was very stressful, very chaotic, a lot of tears. A lot of support of the community. We had people, staff were really, really helpful, cooking us food. People are coming in with donations. It was. They opened up I think it was a big like a gym area, so it was massive for all of us to come in. But there was no one. You don't know who was a survivor, who was not. But it was just nice to see. The more you stay there, the more you see who had made it. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm now going to turn to the topic of emergency accommodation and ask you some
Yeah.
questions about that. If I can take you to paragraph 30, please, of your second
Yeah.
witness statement. Thank you. You say, it was the staff at the rugby club who gathered us together
Yeah.
and explained where we would be staying.
Yeah.
There were around 4 staff members who called people into an office.
Yeah.
They took details of your name and how many were in your family. They would then organise which hotel you were going to and arrange for a taxi to take you to the hotel. I do not know where they were getting their information from to allocate people to hotels.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you some questions about
Sure.
this passage.
Yeah.
Were you aware that there were some RBKC staff from the housing team at the rugby club to organise accommodation?
At that time, I wasn't aware. So I presumed the people that took our details were the staff of the rugby club.
Yes.
So, yeah, I wasn't aware.
Okay. And just if we could go to paragraph 26, please. Within that paragraph, you say there may have been people from RBKC at the rugby club,
Yeah.
but they were not identifiable. They did not have badges on.
Yeah.
So might the people you refer to
Yeah.
have been RBKC staff rather than rugby club staff, do you think?
I'm not 100% sure, so...
Okay. But nobody introduced
just-
themselves to you as from RBKC?
No, they just took out, they say, what's your name, which flat you will live in, how many in your family, and that's it, yeah.
Thank you.
So they know, where they're gonna put you. So, yeah,
Do you remember roughly how long you had to wait before having that meeting?
the whole day. So it was done until the evening, like around 6 or 7. And by the time they allocate, because I had my brother and my mum with me, so I couldn't go and leave them behind. So I had to wait until I make sure they were allocated. They were in the same hotel as myself.
Yeah.
My mum was elderly. My brother had a 1-year-old baby, not even. So yeah, I can't just leave them behind. So yeah.
And what was your experience of this meeting? Were the people that you spoke to about accommodation helpful and sensitive to your needs?
I mean, they only took our name and stuff. They didn't took many details, so it was just a very quick meeting. It wasn't, to sit down and discuss your needs and stuff. So yeah.
Okay. And is it right that you were told you would be staying in the Premier Inn Hotel in Earl's Court, and you then had to wait a further 3 or 4 hours to be taken to the hotel? Is that right?
Yes.
And you say that the staff at the rugby club arranged taxis to take you to the hotel, and you arrived just before midnight. Is that right?
Yeah, we arrived quite late, so yeah.
So at this point, you'd been at the rugby club for over 12 hours. How were you feeling at this point?
I was very tired. I was very stressful, very emotional. My children were all over the place as well. They're really, how are you going to accommodate a 2-year-old baby, toddler? My son had to go with his friend. It's not something that's I allow. You only allow sleepovers with your family members. But at that point, he didn't. The Premier Inn was far away from the area, and he didn't want to leave. So I had to accept that he can stay with this family that we knew from the community. Bakari family, as well as my friends. I will never forget their support. So I had to let him stay and only take my daughters and my mum with me, and my brother. So it was really tiring. Our feet was hurting. It's really, really, really awful.
And when you arrived at the hotel, were you given any information about how long you would be staying there or what provisions and support were available to you?
When we arrived there, it was midnight, more or less. We had to ask we were fasting the next day. We wanted something that, to eat or, to have for suhoor. They provided us with one pizza, I remember. And the next day when we woke up, we went down to the breakfast area, and that's where I met with the other Grenfell survivors that's been allocated in the same hotel. And but we didn't know how long we're going to stay there or what will happen next. Usually on that first week or few days, you just wake up, make sure the children ate, and then we make our way back down to Latima Road area, to the rugby club, to find out what will happen next. So
I just want to ask you about the rooms that you were allocated.
Yeah.
Is it right that you were given 2 rooms that were next to each other on the 4th floor, one for your 2 children aged 10 and 13, and the other for you and your husband and your 2-year-old daughter?
Yes, we were given 2 small rooms, basically just, one bed and one small cot, and the other next one was for my 2 children. But it wasn't, for us a hotel is like when you go on holiday. It's not you're going to live your life there. So it was very hard to keep an eye on my children, to see how they are. If I want to check on them, I have to wear my scarf and leave the room to go out, because there's still other guests are staying, and also the staff of the cleaners and stuff. So it wasn't. You don't feel comfortable. You don't feel like you're, you have your privacy. So and you have to check if they had nightmares and stuff. How are you gonna know? You're gonna have to. It was very hard.
And I think you say that your mother was given a room on the floor below yours. Is that right?
Yes.
And was your brother and his family also placed at the same hotel?
Yeah, they were next to her. Yeah.
Okay. Can I please take you to paragraph 52 of your second witness statement, please? Here you say, living in the hotel was difficult. It was also a very small hotel and there was not much space for us as a family.
Yeah.
The bedrooms are very small and not large enough for us to spend time together as a family. The only communal areas available to us was the hotel lobby and restaurant. There was no playroom facilities available for the children. We would either stay in our rooms or in the reception area. It was claustrophobic and we had to make sure that our children were quiet and on their best behaviour. We did not want to upset the hotel and other guests who may have been on holiday. It was not a good place for children. What was it like having to live in this environment?
It was very hard because, there was the hotel was very small, and therefore they didn't accommodate for a place for children where they can stay or play. So I had a 2-year-old baby, toddler, and there was nothing for her to do. So it was really hard to keep her busy, or to keep her quiet as well, and the other 2 children as well. I mean, as I said, my son was staying with his friend, but my daughter, who was very young at that time, where she's going to be, where she's going to do her homework, or where she's going to have time for herself. So it was really I remember it was very, very small. Only had like the small front door reception area next where the guests come and go. So it wasn't a good place for our children.
Yeah. And did you have any concerns about the location of the hotel and the distance to the community, the local area?
Definitely. We were placed in Earls Court. So to get back to Latimer Road, we had to take either a train and then change in Hammersmith and then take a bus, or take 2 buses. So it was long distance. And to be traveling there every day back and forward. So sometimes, you don't go back to the hotel because you end up staying in the area to find out what's happening, and you might spend the whole day. And by the time you come back, you're very, very tired, and you have to take your children with you. Where it wasn't pleasant. It was really far, and I don't understand why they placed us as far as that, where we were still dealing. We didn't know what was happening. We have to come back to the area to find out what will happen to us next. Who we're going to ask.
Yeah. Can I take you to paragraph 49 of your second statement, please? You say, "We lost everything in the fire. We needed to replace everything we had lost, including clothes, identity documents, and toys. We were trying to work out how to provide for ourselves to put the family back together again. We needed to try and create some kind of stability in terms of food, clothes, schooling. We needed to try to survive in this new environment. We had to start from scratch. To do that, we needed to go back to the Latimer Road area, where the other relief centres were and where my children's school was. The hotel was too far away from the Latimer Road." You've already touched on this, but can you just tell us what the impact was for you of being so far from the Latimer Road area?
The impact was, it was really hard, and it was very stressful, because I don't know the area in Earls Court, and we don't know where to go. And also, we wanted to come back to Latimer Road because we needed. That's where our community is, and that's where that's where my children has grown, and where we know everyone. And we didn't have anything, so we had nothing. So no bank cards, nothing. So I literally left with empty, just with my keys and my phone, because I was on a phone with my friend. So we had nothing to survive on. We both were working, so it was hard to ask for help. We had some charities. The Zakat Foundation supported us with some money just to get us going, but we had to go back to Latimer Road Station, because that's where, at the rugby club, where we needed to find out the information or what will happen next, as in terms of if there is any information about our housing, or how to obtain our ID cards or our bank cards or anything. Yeah, so basically we had to go back every day. Yeah.
And just returning briefly to the arrangements for your hotel accommodation.
Sure.
You say in your statement that the reception would tell us how long we were booked to stay at the hotel,
Yeah.
and we'd receive letters from the hotel under our doors,
Yeah.
telling us that our hotel stays would be extended.
Yeah.
Did you ever get any information from RBKC within the first week following the fire about how long your stay was going to be?
We didn't know at all on the first week how long we're going to stay. Nothing. I think it was the week or 2 weeks later that we started to. The manager of the hotel will come tell us in the morning at the breakfast time. This is how long it's going to be, and then each month you go down and ask, and then they say, "Oh, it's been extended to this time, to this time." So yeah, we didn't.
And how did you feel about this as a method of letting you know how long you had accommodation for?
It was really stressful. Make us really angry, because you don't know how you're going to live on the next day. So we don't know. Our future was blank. We didn't know what we'll expect, how long we're going to be in a hotel. The children were getting very annoyed. There was no place for them to do. They used to do homework in the restaurants, especially for. Was our primary. Was still little, but still, the food was not great. We would just, as a Muslim person, we didn't have, it was not accommodated in a hotel. We were stuck to either have a pizza or a fish and chips. And I remember clearly my daughter used to say that to her head teacher, bless her, and he used to take her out for, just for treats as a way of, of making her feel better. But it's just, we didn't know what was happening. So it was really, really stressful. Make us really agitated, angry. You could snap up on anything. Anything would make you, really angry, because there is no stability. There, you don't feel safe. You don't feel what will happen next.
Yeah. And you've mentioned that the food was not suitable. Is that because it wasn't halal?
Yes, it wasn't halal, and plus there was very limited vegetarian options. So there's either a fish and chip or a pizza. So how are you going to survive on that, especially for the kids and nutrition?
And I think you say in your statement that the hotel provided meals, but at set times.
Yeah.
What did that mean for you and your family who were observing Ramadan?
Well, it was hard because we didn't, as we were fasting, so we missed the breakfast and the lunch. So there was only dinner available, and that was after a certain time, like by 10 o'clock, or would be the latest. And because we spent the whole day outside, so basically we were having food outside the rugby club with the community. So they provided futur for us. But at the hotel, it was just very limited if you were late, so that's it, you don't have anything. And we relied a lot on volunteers. We had a volunteer lady who used to bring us food to the hotel. Her husband was catering for us as the people who were fasting. So she will ring me and say, "Oh, how many families are in the hotel?" And she will bring food, and that's how we survived. Basically on the hand of our community.
Thank you. You mentioned in your statement that at some point you had a key worker who provided you with food vouchers.
Yeah.
Was that within the first week following the fire?
No, that was 2 weeks later. No, it wasn't on the first week. First week was just on the hand of the community and the people who give it donations.
Okay. Turning now to ask you some questions about the facilities at the hotel very briefly. Mm-hmm. How would you describe the facilities available at the Premier Inn?
There was no facilities. There was just us, the room, and there was no laundry. So if I wanted to wash our kids, my clothes or children's clothes, or we had to find a laundrette outside, which I didn't know in the area. So because my mum's had access to her house, they was allowed to go back for a bit. So I would have to carry all the bags and take them to hers. Or sometimes I wouldn't be able to go because it's too long. So I'll just try to find the nearest laundry. So you have to, again, rely on the facilities of the donations of people, so we can, until we saw our accounts and have access to our money, it was just on the donations of people. Yeah.
And whilst you were at the hotel, did anybody from RBKC or the TMO visit you within the first week following the fire, offering any support?
Not on the first week, no. I think they came on the second week, where they had. We had a meeting with they introduced the key worker or the social worker.
Yeah. And we'll be coming back to key workers and social workers in due course.
Sure.
And is it right that you were living in this hotel from the 14th of June 2017 until the end of July?
Yes.
And then your husband asked RBKC for your family to move somewhere a bit closer?
Yes, we left there until the end of July. And we approached RBKC because we said we wanted somewhere near the area because of the children's school, and also for our, that's our community, and that's where we know where to go. So, and that's where the rest centers were available at that time. So at the beginning they said no, there wasn't any. So we had to rely on the volunteers who actually supported us and arranged another hotel near Shepherd Bush. So it was a bit like 15, 20 minutes away from Latima, so it was near. But it wasn't RBKC. It was after the volunteers that managed to secure a hotel, and then RBKC just said, "Oh yeah, actually we found you a place." I was like, "It's a bit late now. We already got one." So it's like duplications of stuff.
Yeah.
They were not organized at all.
Thank you. Now I want to revisit your experiences in the first week, and in particular your experiences of visiting various rest centres.
Sure.
You and your family, as you've said, you went back to the rugby club on the
Yeah.
15th of June. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
And you've explained to us that was really to get support and information about what was going on.
Yeah. So we went back on the 15th, the next day, because to find out, at that time we were still looking to see who had made it out of the tower. So that was our most focus on, is to find out who made it out and who hasn't. And to also to see the people from the community that had their family in the tower, like the Wahhabis. I knew quite a lot of them, and other neighbours. So it was literally just to see what will happen to us next. So yeah.
Yeah. And how would you describe the atmosphere in the area when you returned on the 15th of June?
It was really chaotic, really very busy, very stressful. A lot of smoke, still the smell of the burning tower. The next day we can still see the tower was not, the fire was still on the middle of the tower. There was still, you can see still light up. So it was just the police were everywhere, the cars everywhere. It was very chaotic. It's not easy to get in. Everything was coordinated, especially like from the Lancaster, the beginning of Lancaster West. So you cannot access through with the cars and everything. You have to walk. It was really, really hard. People everywhere. People are crying. People are searching, starting to put out pictures and names around the walls in the area, especially the wall that is outside the rugby. It was filled of pictures. People are sitting outside and asking and gathering. It was just to see what will happen next, what's going on.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that people were looking for their loved ones.
Yeah.
Were you aware of any centralised or official source of information about those who were missing?
No, there was nothing at that first week. Literally, only the wallpaper that we had at the rugby club. That was the only place where we will see who had made it, who hasn't. Apart from the police, when they came and they just wanted to see if there were any people who have taken any pictures or any videos. That was their main, and who has made it out, and that's it. That was them, the only people that have asked, but we didn't have nothing. And the media was everywhere. It was really, we were really harassed by the media.
Yeah.
It was everywhere.
So at this point, you've mentioned the police, but was there anyone from the TMO or RBKC at this point?
No at all.
Were you surprised by the absence of people from RBKC or TMO?
Of course, I am very surprised because I lived in a tower for nearly 20 years, shall I say? Yeah, and we always pay our rent. And if you didn't pay your rent, they will come and you will get letters, you will get phone calls. But on the day of when it happened, no one has turned up. So where is the duty of care? How are you going to help us? There was nothing. There was no one there. So it was just absent. No one from the government, no one from the authority. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know how to seek help. We didn't know what will happen next. It was just questions mark, because we don't know nothing.
I now want to ask you some questions about your experiences of visiting the Westway Centre.
Yeah.
Is it right that you found out about the Westway Centre through word of mouth?
Of course, yeah.
And in your statement, you say that in the first week, you spent most of your time between the Westway Centre and the rugby club. Is that right?
I could be right because it was at the, it was done. But when I think about it clearly, the first week was more or less at the rugby club, and then afterwards we went to the Westway. So yeah.
Okay. Can I take you, please, to paragraph 39 of your second witness statement?
Sure.
So you say the 15th of June 2017 was the first day we went to the Westway. There were tables outside and you would have to queue up and give your details in order to be permitted entry.
Yeah.
The British Red Cross were on the door and they would give you a wristband for identity. They let me in because I was a Tower resident, even though I couldn't prove this, because I didn't have any documents on me, but they just believed me.
Yeah.
The wristband would change each time you went. The colour of the wristband identified me as a survivor.
Yes.
Just want to ask you some questions about this passage.
Sure.
Were you aware of people not being let in because they weren't Tower residents?
I'm not sure, to be honest, because no one could prove who they were at that time. So you could say you were from the Tower, and they will say yes, and you get the wristband, you go in. But as we go inside and you see people, you start to identify who actually was from the Tower, who wasn't. And you will know people who are actually just from the community and not actually from the Tower itself. So, yeah.
You go on to say in your statement that there were Westway staff and other people there, including volunteers.
Yeah.
Who did you understand to be running the centre when you attended?
Maybe the Westway people and the British Red Cross, because they were, I think they had T-shirts, so they knew, we knew they were from British Red Cross. But mainly it's the staff of the Westway.
What was your experience of the British Red Cross at the Westway Centre?
I mean, they were very helpful. They were not rude. So, yeah, they because you will go there every day, they will know that you are as a survivor. So, yeah, it was just built on trust, I believe. And, yeah.
You also say in your statement that there were a number of official organisations at the Westway, such as the Department for Work and Pensions, RBKC Housing Team, NHS, the Police, Transport for London, and the Zakat Foundation. Mm-hmm. Did you find these services helpful for your needs in the first week following the fire?
Well, they weren't there, as I say, I don't think they were there on the first week. So I think the Westway was on the second week after the incident. So they were there to take on our details, and you have to queue up and then give your details and see if they can help. Yes, definitely, I would say the staff were very helpful. I managed to do my ID and my child tax and so on. In terms of housing, they were there, but there was no. They didn't know what will happen next, so there was no answer. You'll be given the same answer every day when you go in: is wait, we don't know what will happen next. So it's just more stress, as you don't know how long you're going to be, in a hotel, how long you're going to be able to accommodate your children, and be in that environment.
Yeah. Do you remember speaking to anybody from the TMO at the Westway Centre?
I don't remember TMO. I remember people from housing in RBKC. Yeah.
Okay. And just very briefly, in terms of other support at the Westway Centre, is it right that there was a reception area with food and clothes?
Yes, there was a lot of donations from everywhere, from a lot of people in the community. And the volunteers there was really supportive, as it providing us with toiletries and some toys for the children, some clothing, So, yeah, they were very, and food for the kids. So, yeah, they were very helpful.
Thank you. And just touching briefly on some of the other relief centres that you visited.
Sure.
Is it right that you visited the Al-Manar Mosque during the first week following the fire?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, I remember because the Zakat Foundation were based there, and that's how they supported us, and also they provided that with iftar. As it was Ramadan and it was a place of worship. So even though it's a mosque, but it's also a cultural heritage center. So it was, it had there was other support available for the children. So yeah.
And I think you also visited the Latimer Christian Centre, is that right?
Yes, I did, yeah.
And what was your experience like at that centre?
They were very helpful as well. They would take your name and your details just to clarify who you were. And yeah, they supported us with clothing again, and for the children especially. And they were going back to school. So yeah, we didn't feel just because we're Muslims or we were, or we're not English, that we're not going to be helpful. Grenfell was it opened, it showed us that we are one community and one faith. So the amount of support that was given to us during that time and up till now, it's amazing, and we will never forget. I will always appreciate.
And how did your experience at the Westway Centre compare with your experiences at the Rugby Club, Almanar and the Latimer Christian Centre?
They're all very helpful, to be honest. Each centre, they were very sensitive to our needs. They were helpful in approaching and supporting us. Then they were very polite. And yeah, just to accommodate our needs with the food, we had meals at the Westways, we had meals at the Rugby Club during Ramadan. They always, provided iftar, and it was, all of us sitting, together. Just feels, we are as a family. Even though at that time, everybody was really, stressful. We really, felt alone. But as a community, we felt as one family, and they all were supportive. Yeah, definitely.
And how did the community response compare to the official response from central government, RBKC,
the community,
and the TMO?
The community was 100% supportive from the nights. They did all what they could, what they could do to help us. We had people from all over, all the nations, from all over the place. They were coming, all over the areas. People not just from, from Latimer or from Labda Grove, or from everywhere. People just came down. Anyone wanted to help. Anyone wanted to provide support, even for accommodation. There were people, telling us, oh, if you want to come and stay, and until you saw your accommodation. They were very supportive, 100%. But no sign of the government at all, or housing. So yeah.
Okay. I'm now going to ask you some questions about financial assistance. Okay. And can I take you, please, to paragraphs 63 and 64 of your second witness statement, please? So paragraph 63 says, for the two of us, it is not in our experience to rely on benefits and handouts. Yeah. Yusuf and I have always worked and been self-reliant. It was challenging and difficult to rely on the charity of other people in order to get the basics and to provide for ourselves and our family. We had no choice because we didn't have access to our own funds, and the council wasn't stepping forward to provide for us. Is that right?
Yes, it is. As I say, on the first week and also first 2 weeks, we didn't have access to our account at all, as we lost everything, and we had to rely on the support of the donations of the charities, like, as I said, the Zakat Foundation. We had the donations from community members, some family members as well. So it was really hard because we never claimed any benefits. I always worked, and so was my husband. So we always relied on our own money. So it was I wouldn't say humiliating, but it was really we appreciate the support, because without their donations we couldn't be able to, to provide for our children and, just for the basic. So yeah.
And did you receive an emergency payment from RBKC within the first week following the fire?
Not on the first week, no. No.
Did you receive any information about financial assistance from RBKC in the first week following the fire?
No, not at all, no.
And is it right that in July 2017 you were told to go to the post office to receive a one-off payment of £5,000 from the government?
Yes, we were told to go to the post office in Goulburn Road and, to receive this one-off payments to support us, yeah.
And was this the first time you've received any official financial assistance?
Yes. Yeah.
And who told you about that payment being available?
Word of mouth again. It's just, survivors between us, just whoever finds information, he'll rely on to the other person. Yeah.
And now moving on to the topic of public communication.
Yeah.
Can I take you to paragraph 66 of your second statement, please?
Yeah.
You say, Grenfell United was set up in the first or second night after the fire to be the voice of Tower residents and to be a source of information and support.
Yeah.
No one from government or RBKC was there to support us.
Yeah.
We only had our own community.
Yes.
There was a complete absence of information in the first few days.
Yeah.
We felt abandoned by the authorities and left to fend for ourselves.
Yeah.
In your view, was Grenfell United born as a result of the complete absence of information that you've just described?
Definitely. We were on a second day. One of our members, Ed and Mahad, they took the initial to take names down of people who made it out of the tower, and also to take down their email if we wanted to create like not an organization, but just organize ourselves to be as one voice. So because there was no one available, who's going to help us? So we decided it's going to be us who's going to, be seeking information and finding out if we can support each other as a family. So so it was born on the second night, and people were volunteering, putting their name down to see if we can, how we're going to start Grenfell United. Yeah.
And is it right that you became heavily involved in Grenfell United?
Yes. Initially we were supported by Howard at Clement James to find, it was Marcus Manford who helped us to find someone who can support us, because at that time everyone was very stressful. Everyone was angry and upset, so it was really hard to put our voices together, not because we didn't respect each other, just because of how we were at that time. So we needed someone from outside to help us together. So we, through Manford, we found a young man that we didn't think he was able to lead us. And then we were introduced by Father Oliver McTurnan, a lovely man who supported us all the way, with his colleague Jordan from Respect, and they came and met a few members of us, like Mr. Willie, Shaheen, Ed, Turafat, Tiago, Miguel, Sid, and Mahad, and then there was a lack of shall we say female presence on the community. So I was encouraged by Turafat to get involved, and because I used to work as a domestic violence outreach worker, so I was initially heavily involved in the community. So I thought, let me do my part as well and support our families in order to see how we can help each other to rebuild our lives and to provide any support we can. So yeah, I was heavily involved from the beginning with Grenfell United.
And if we could just go to paragraph 68, please, of your second statement.
Yeah.
You say our main focus in GU was to find out what support was available to survivors. People volunteered to get involved. At the beginning, people volunteered to find out the issues Tower residents had and who we could approach for assistance.
Yeah.
We wanted to know where they were going to be staying and what was happening to us.
Yeah.
We wanted to know what support could be offered to children and those with disabilities and families.
Yeah.
We also needed to find out who the survivors were,
Yeah.
to get a proper list of those who died and who had survived.
Yeah.
We needed to know how many people we had lost. We had to use the rugby club's list of the residents to find out who had made it out of the fire.
Yeah.
Aside from the key worker we were allocated, we had to rely on GU to find out information. We had to do all of the running around ourselves.
Yeah.
We had to do this to look after one another because no one else was. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. GU was made out of us survivors of the Grenfell Tower. We had some bereaved as well, and basically we wanted to find out, what was the issues that was happening for everyone that was staying in the hotels, whether they were provided with the support that they needed, like food or any support for the children. The children were starting to go back slowly to the schools, so to see what else. And we developed like a drop-in session for us. So we used to rely on the support of some people people that were staying in the hotels to provide us with the rooms where we can meet, because we didn't have anywhere. So it was basically all the work was done through the volunteers, the people that put themselves forward. So it will be myself, will be Ed, Turufat, will be Shaheen, will be Mahad. It was Miguel that time, and a few others. So each one of us will get in touch with us survivors or bereaved, more or less survivors at that time, because the bereaved, it was really hard at that time to approach them as they were dealing with their grief, and they were not aware of what will happen to their loved ones. So a lot of focus at that time was on the survivors, and just to see what support they needed. So Grenfell United was we wanted it to be a place for survivors to receive help and see whether we can who else we can approach to for support as one voice instead of individual. Yeah.
Thank you. And if we could take you to please paragraph 83 on your second statement. You say RBKC should have been there on the first night. They should have showed us where to go in the aftermath of the fire, and they should have had staff down at the relief centres helping and organising things. We needed support to know what to do next, where to go, who we needed to speak to, where we were going to live, and what support was available. There was no information from RBKC to help us or signpost us to support. We should not have had to rely on others. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, because as I said before, when you don't pay your rents, they will be on you. They'll come and pressure you. Even like during the refurbishments, where we didn't let the contractors in, they will send they will send their staff. They send our rent officers to pressure us. So when the incident happened, when the tragedy happened, there was no sign of them. So we didn't know where to go. Everything was just word of mouth, and what the community has offered us, what the rest centres have offered us. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know who we need to approach, what is going to happen to us, where we're going to be living, how long we're going to be there, what is available for the children. There was nothing. So there was no sign of RBKC to support us.
You continue in your statement and you say there was no humanity in the way that RBKC dealt with things. What did you mean by that?
They did not they did not feel, there was no human contacts between the staff and us, because they were not present, they were not there to give us the support. So there was no understanding or no empathy or sympathy from them to be there and support us. So yeah, there was no there is no lacking of culture, I guess. Yeah.
And what difference would clear communication from RBKC about the support available, what difference would that have made for you in the immediate aftermath?
It would have made a lot of difference, because it would be less stressful for us to know this is where we need to go. Since the strategy happened, this is the place to go to get information or get support, to know where you're going to be staying, who you're going to be, where you're going to get your ID or your stuff. So just to find out what's information is there for us to support us. Yeah, it'll be less stressful for us, less upsetting.
Turning now, please, to psychosocial support.
Mm-hmm.
It's right, I think, that you had your first key worker was from Ealing Council.
Yeah.
And you had your first meeting with her 2 days after the fire. Is that right?
I could say yes, but I'm not sure it was 2 days after. But yeah.
Do you think it was within the first week following the fire?
I think it was the second week. I don't think it was the first week.
Okay. And what was your experience with your first key worker?
She was very supportive, the best one I had so far. Apart from now. She was very supportive, very keen to approach the staff at the council and find out all the information I required or I needed, to help my children or to help, support with them to go into school, to support with them at school. I never had key workers before in my life. I used to work with them, but I never had them initially. So that was the first time to experience that. But she was really, really helpful, as in finding out the information for myself and my family and whatever I need. Yeah.
And is it right that you had 4 other key workers after your first key worker?
6.
6.
This is my 6th one. Each one of them was for a very short time. Like I had one who was actually the chair of the Child Protection Conference, so I knew she was not going to stay long. So initially I just met her once and then spoke to her like twice. And then I had a really very supportive one. She used to call Aisha. She really helped my son, and she was very understanding. And then again, they changed. They just keep changing without giving you notice, and then you have to repeat yourself and go through everything. So I wish they could, I think by the end they taught a lesson that's, read the file, find out what's happening, understand the people you're dealing with. And if you don't have any training, get the training. It's because, people are, it's like when you're supporting domestic violence, if you don't have appropriate training, how are you going to provide her with the right support, like the emotional, the practical? So, yeah, I think towards getting to my 6th one, I think they understood how it works.
Yeah. And how did the change in key workers affect the information you were receiving?
It's a lot. It's make the information, you get it very late, but because as I worked before and I did this kind of work, so I didn't really rely on the key workers. I could do the stuff myself. So it was basically sometimes because you get so angry and so emotional as when you explaining yourself and trying to get the support for your family and for your children. It's nice to have someone who can take on that responsibility, but it's the information you get it really slow, not on the right time. So yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you about mental health support. Mm-hmm. In your statement, you say that you were referred for counselling by your GP, but do you recall there being any therapy or counselling services offered or signposted within the first week following the fire?
No, there was nothing. on the first week, it was basically just us at the rugby club and trying to find out who made it out of the building. And there was no authorities, no staff, no other organizations available. And initially I was referred to my GP because I had to request sick notes for my work because I wasn't able to go back. And that's where she initially referred me to the Grenfell, referred me to St. Charles, and then later on they became Grenfell counselling service. Yeah.
And just touching briefly on the needs of specific groups,
Mm-hmm.
in your statement you say that the support available for children, the elderly and disabled
Yeah.
was lacking. When you really needed something, you would have to fight for it.
Yeah.
What do you mean by having to fight for this? Sorry, it's in
where-
paragraph 88.
88. Okay, sorry. Yes, so there was nothing available for the children or for the elderly people or disabled at the first week or even the second week. So that was the reason for us to create Grenfell United, so we can liaise with whoever other authorities that could support us. So like for the children, they were going back to school. What support was they given at school? Would they be given any emotional support, any counselling, any assessments? There was nothing. We didn't know who to approach, so we had to do it ourselves. Or even for the elderly, what support is available for them in terms of their needs at the hotel, or getting out, reaching to the community, because we were all placed all over. I would say the area, London, more or less, So it wasn't. We were not put in next to the tower. We were very far from the tower. So how are we going to be able to access and come? It was very difficult for everyone. So yeah.
Turning now to the last section of my questions, I want to ask you about your observations on the overall response. Mm-hmm. Were you aware of any central government involvement or support in the first week following the fire?
There was zero involvement. There was no involvement at all from the governments. We didn't see anyone. No one came down to see us, apart from the police that were gathering information, and not to give support, just to gather the information. Yeah.
Did you notice any difference in the support or coordination available on the 16th of June once the London Gold Group took over?
Not a lot, to be honest, no.
Okay.
They just started, so it was initially getting information. It's not to support, but it's to find out what was happening and what was lacking or missing. Yeah.
And towards the end of your second witness statement, in paragraph 99, you say, "The experience was humiliating. After the horror of escaping the burning tower, we ended up walking around centres, trying to get hold of clothes and a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
It is not a humane experience."
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add to your evidence today, Ms. El Ogbani?
Yes. I wanted to add is we don't want the same thing happen again. Another Grenfell happen again. We want people to be listened to. We want people that are living in social services, social housing, to be, when they complain or when they make a request for something, to be taken seriously and to be treated with dignity and respect. We want it to be a centre that is, out of all what happened, all this all this chaos and all this stress and anxiety that happened, not just to survivors, for the bereaved as well, is when God forbid, if this something happened, that there will be one center available where they will have all the information that every person would require at that time, whether, for your housing, whether for your health, whether for your children, for education, to be one thing. That's what I wanted to say. We don't want another Grenfell to happen, but the support to be given, and the government and the RBKC or any other, landlords or landlords to be available and available for support and not to be absent. Yeah. Thank you.
Those are all the questions I have for you, Ms. El Ogbani, but we're going to pause to see if there are any questions from anyone else.
Sure.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, you may know this, but we normally have a short break at this stage to give other people the chance to suggest questions that perhaps we ought to ask you to deal with. It's a convenient point because I think it's time we had the morning break in any event. So we'll break there. We'll come back at 11:30.
Sure.
We'll see if there are any more questions for you, and just make it clear that if anyone does wish to send questions in for consideration, then now is the time to do it, and then we'll see what comes. All right? Thank you very much. Would you go with the usher then, please?
Sure. Thank you.
Right, Mrs. 11:30 then, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you ask Mrs. El Ogbani to come back in, please? Okay. Right, Mrs. El Ogbani, we'll see if there are any more questions for you.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes.
Just one further question, please.
Sure.
Were you aware of a shuttle service between the hotels and the Westway Centre in the first week following the fire?
I cannot remember, to be honest.
Okay,
Yeah, I cannot remember.
thank you.
No.
That's all from me. Thank you
Okay.
very much for assisting us today at the inquiry. We're really grateful to you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you very much, Mrs. El Ogbani, for coming to give your evidence. And I say that on behalf of all three members of the panel, of course. It's really helpful to us to hear
Sure.
about your experiences. They sound to have been very unpleasant and no doubt very distressing as well. And I hope it hasn't been too difficult for you to come and
Yeah.
tell us about them. But, we've learned a lot and we're very grateful to you. So,
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share as well.
well, thank you for taking it and coming along.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Now, you'd like to go with the usher, you're free to go, of course. No, we have another witness waiting, but I think we need to rise for a brief moment while some arrangements are made. Is that right?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman.
Right, we'll do that. And would you ask the usher to come and tell us as soon as you're ready?
I will.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Malhotra.
Well, sir, the next witness is Miss Boujettif.
Thank you. Good morning, Miss Boujettif.
Good morning.
I understand you're going to take the oath.
Yep,
You should find a copy of the Quran there within the covering.
perfect.
Would you hold it in your hand, please, and read the words on the screen?
I swear by Allah that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Now, do sit down, make yourself comfortable, please. Right?
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, when you're ready.
Miss Boujettif, can I thank you firstly for coming today to give evidence to this public inquiry and for your assistance with the inquiry's investigation so far. Just a few words by way of introduction, if I may. Could I invite you please to keep your voice up so that we can hear you clearly? It also helps not to nod or shake your head because nods and shakes don't go on the transcript, but yes and no do. If any of my questions are unclear, please say so and I will happily rephrase them. Finally, Ms Boujettif, we recognise that this may be a difficult process for you. If you would like a break at any time, please do let me know. I'm going to turn to your statements next. You've made 2 statements to the inquiry. They will appear on the screen in front of you. Could I take you to your first statement? That's IWS 50469. We can see on the right-hand side it is dated the 17th of May 2018. If we turn to page 12 of this first statement, we can see a signature there. Is that yours?
Yes.
Could I take you next to your second statement, please? That's IWS 401608. On the right-hand side of the statement, we can see it is dated the 25th of February 2020. On page 12, we can see there a signature. Is that your signature?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to read both of your witness statements recently?
Yes, recently, yes.
Can you confirm that the contents are true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Ms Boujettif, during the course of your evidence, I will be referring to both of your witness statements that you've provided to the inquiry. The focus of my questions today will be the following 3 topics. Firstly, your evacuation on the 14th of June. Secondly, your experience of emergency accommodation. And thirdly, your experience of the support provided to you in the following days of the fire. Before coming to your evacuation on the 14th of June of 2017, were you at the time of the fire a resident of Hurstway Walk?
Yes.
Have you lived in Hurstway Walk all your life?
Yes.
You were born and raised there, were you?
Yes.
Is it right that you worked and still do as a pastoral support manager at Kensington Aldridge Academy?
Correct, yes.
You say in your second statement at paragraph 5, the community on the estate has always formed a big part of your life. You also say in your first statement at paragraph 28 that your role as a pastoral support officer at Kensington Aldridge Academy meant that you worked closely with pupils. You say, my relationship with the pupils was made closer by the fact that I live in the community and often see them out of school. As a result of those close connections in the area and your work with the academy, you knew children and residents who tragically perished in the fire. Is that right?
Yes.
It's all right, just take your time, there's no rush.
You can continue.
I would like to turn now to the night of the fire. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
If you do need a break at any point, please do let us know.
That's absolutely fine.
How did you first become aware of the fire?
A neighbour, but also a colleague, continued to call me on my phone. Initially, I brushed it off. I assumed that she wasn't coming to work the next day, so I just didn't answer. And I assumed when she saw that I wasn't going to answer the calls, she sent me a text message with capital letters that said, Grenfell is on fire. Oh, it's on fire. It's on fire.
Can you recall roughly what time this was?
Just before 1 o'clock.
Shortly after receiving this call and text message,
Yeah.
you went out and observed the fire from Grenfell Walk for approximately 45 minutes until you were ushered back into the walkways by a policeman. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Is it the case that you remained in Hurstway Walk for less than an hour before a police officer told you and others to leave?
Yes.
Did you get a chance to gather any belongings of yours before you left home?
That I was able to. I did ask the policeman at the time, how long do we have to leave Hurstway Walk? Just so I know if I can pack a bag or it's actually just close your front door and leave. But I think the panic that he was in, he wasn't really clear and just kind of was barking that you just need to go, you need to leave. So I went in, grabbed a handbag, and made sure that the front door was locked.
You say in your second statement at paragraph 25, your wallet was left behind in your coat pocket.
Yeah.
Does it follow that you left home without any ID, cash or bank cards?
Yeah, the bag was pretty much useless. The night before, I had gone to Co-op with just my purse. I had popped it in my cardigan and just left it on the coat hanger. But in the panic, I just assumed I had everything in my handbag. So I had no money, no ID, not anything that I really needed. And I wasn't given clear instructions on how soon I had to evacuate. Whether I could pack a bag, whether I could make sure I had everything, maybe look for my passport, that was a bit unclear. So I just grabbed the nearest thing and kind of left.
How would you describe your evacuation?
The evacuation completely, or the evacuation from the landing?
From the landing?
Rushed, and there, from my memory, there wasn't that many first responders on the landing. There was one policeman, and he was just saying go into the walkway. He wasn't saying to go into your homes, you just had to get off the landing. So we continued to stay in the walkway and not go into our flats and try and look out of the windows. But there was no real instruction. There was only one policeman kind of just saying, go in, just go in.
Once you were told to leave and to leave immediately, and you picked up your bag and left,
Yeah.
Were you given any information from any officials about where to go? Were you directed to go to any centre, for example?
No, it was just you need to evacuate your home. You can't stay in the walkway anymore. Some residents, if you've ever been to the walkway, there's loads of different entrances and exits. For some reason, my mind was, no one told me where to go, but I went straight down the walkway towards Latimer train station. Some neighbours had left and gone, there's a big garden just underneath Grenfell Tower. They evacuated there, but there was no one saying specifically, this is your evacuation spot, you need to assemble there. It was just, you just need to leave your house.
You walked to Bramley Road, where other residents of the walkways and members of the community had gathered. Did there come a time later when you were joined by colleagues of yours from work?
Yes.
I believe this was about 4 or 4:30, is that right?
Yes.
What were you and your colleagues doing at that time?
The vice principal of the academy lives opposite Grenfell Tower. She was able to go and get her laptop, and the colleagues that were there are not able to use the systems. I was the only one able to log in to the school's platform where all the addresses are. So they asked me if I can log in. Put a list of names and addresses of students that we know that are in the tower. So we would have an idea of how many students of ours are Grenfell Tower residents, and just try to have a rough idea of, even if it was just rumours, of who has been seen.
Were you aware of any officials from RBKC or TMO or anyone else for that matter at the scene who were conducting a similar exercise of trying to account for who was in the tower, who was safe, or who was sadly still not accounted for?
At 4:30 a.m, no.
You describe in your first statement at paragraph 26 seeing a mother who was searching for her missing daughter,
Yes.
a former pupil who you knew. You say, although you tried to comfort her, you felt helpless, as there was no information on where the loved ones of those missing could get help. Is that right?
That's correct. It was Jessica's mother.
Later in the morning, did it become clear to you that you would not be able to return to your home?
Yes. But that was just out of seeing the tower, that it was still on fire, and that my entrance was cornered off. There was no official. It was just me making that assumption that I wouldn't be able to go home.
Had you received any information from anyone official about where evacuated residents could go for information or support?
No, I did not.
Did you hear from other residents where you could go?
Yes.
What did you hear?
That there was Westway and the Latimer Christian Centre.
Did you, at that stage, go to the Westway or the Latimer Road Christian Centre?
I went later on that day. I first went when around 8 o'clock, when I was no longer able to work, and it was clear that I wasn't going home. A friend of mine lent me her keys, so I walked from Latimer Road to Stamford Brook and tried to get some sleep there. And then that's when the messages started to come in to say, go to Westway. There's also help in Latimer Christian Centre. And that's when I made my way down, maybe at like 2 o'clock.
So you returned later that afternoon and you were told by others and your friends that people were congregating at the Westway.
Yes.
I would like to focus now on this occasion when you went to the Westway, this first occasion when you went there on the 14th of June. The inquiry has heard some evidence from others that they were unable to get into the Westway. What was your experience?
I was able to get into Westway. If I remember correctly, there were stewards outside. I think they were from Christian Aid. And you just gave your address, and then they let you in.
The inquiry has heard of wristbands. Were you given a wristband?
Yes,
to
I
wear?
was.
Were you asked to provide any ID before you could enter?
I can't remember if I was asked to provide any ID, but even if I was, I wouldn't have been able to provide anything.
Paragraph 23 of your second statement, you say this.
Would you like it on the screen?
Yes, please. It's page 5, IWS 401608. It's paragraph 23. You say there, the atmosphere at the Westway was quite overwhelming. It did not seem well organised. There were lots of people there, and so much noise and movement. You say that you saw some stewards outside who you believe may have been from Christian Aid. Once inside the Westway, did you see any officials inside?
I saw an official inside, yes.
Do you know where they were from?
RBKC.
Were they wearing any identification, or did they introduce themselves as from RBKC?
No, they were sat on just a normal desk. He was in casual clothes, but he had an RBKC lanyard.
Did you speak to them?
Yes, I did.
Could you tell us how many there were?
I only spoke to one person. I'm not sure if there were others in Westway, but I was directed to him.
What did you speak about?
I just wanted to know what was happening with the walkways, and to try and confirm whether we were definitely not allowed back in, or if we were going to be allowed back in, and any time frames.
Did you receive any information about when you could return home?
No, the conversation didn't go very well. There was a lot of back and forth. He was very, very rude, very condescending. He had advised me if I wanted an update, I would need to look at the news for an update on when I will be allowed back home.
How did you feel following this interaction?
Quite disheartened. I got very angry and frustrated, which then he thought it would be appropriate for him to say to me that people have died. And so he made me feel that I was last. Finding out whether I could go back home was least of anyone's priority. Which, coming from an RBKC representative, is pretty much normal, having that feeling of you're not priority. Very abrupt, very condescending, is a common theme it felt worse because of the moment, but it wasn't a new experience.
Is it right that you left the Westway Centre that day then, having received no information about when you could return home or what alternative accommodation there was for you?
He suggested that I could stay in St Charles Sixth Form, and also there would hopefully be space in Westway.
Is it right that you made your own arrangements to stay with family?
I stayed at my friend's house.
If I could take you to your second statement at paragraph 27. That's IWS. Oh, there it is. You say, for the next few days I borrowed cash from friends and was not given money here and there by family. I was not aware of any alternative, is that right?
Yes. I had to borrow money because I forgot my purse at home.
Ms Boujettif, we've spoken about your evacuation on the day of the fire and your experience of the Westway Centre that same day. The focus of my questions next moves to a few days later when you returned back to the estate.
Yep.
You say in your statement that it was around the 19th or 20th of June.
Yep.
Are you able to recall which day it was now?
I'm leaning towards the 19th, but I'm not sure.
Had you, by this point, been contacted by anyone official notifying you of when you could return home or if there was any emergency accommodation or support available to you?
My sister received a text message from TMO saying that we were allowed back home, but there will be no gas and no heating. And she sent me the picture of the text message, which, considering everything that was happening, I was so happy to be able to just go home. I arrived at the entrance by Latimer train station, showed the policeman, and he completely denied any access to go in. So I left quite disheartened and messaged my friend to say, actually, I need to stay a little bit longer. And as I was walking, I saw a neighbour who lives downstairs, and he said, try the back way through the garden. So I did. I went over to the garden entrance, and there was a policeman standing there. He wasn't sure why TMO would have sent that message. He was under instructions that no one from the 300s was allowed back in. I pleaded to say that I have no purse, no money, no clothes. So he was able to call, I think, a superior who said I can go in with a police escort. So that's when I was able to first go in and grab some clothes and my purse.
After having the opportunity then to get some items from your home, did there come a time when you went to the Westway for a second time?
No, I just did not go back to Westway until much later.
So you went back to the Westway was it after the 19th or 20th?
Yes. After the first experience, I didn't feel that Westway was the place to go for any information or for any direction or help.
So you didn't attend on the 19th or 20th to the Westway?
No.
Did there come a time when you went back to your home address, having received a text message, and where you telephoned an RBKC telephone number in order to try and secure some accommodation?
No.
Perhaps I could help you in this way. If I could ask you to have a look at your second witness statement at paragraph 29. You say here, I called RBKC. I was waiting on the phone for about 30 minutes before somebody answered. The first person I spoke to said that they were under the assumption that I could go back in, but that I needed to call the emergency accommodation line. I spoke to somebody there who asked if I could stay at the Westway or with friends. I explained we were staying with family, but that we could not stay there long. You then go on to say, the police officer with me could tell that I was feeling overwhelmed and exasperated. He then spoke to the person from RBKC, and they then agreed that I could stay at the Holiday Inn in West Kensington for one night. I was to call back the next day. I just wonder if you could help us with the time frame of when this interaction took place.
This interaction took place the day I went to 2 days after when I tried to go back into the flat.
So 2 days after the 19th or 20th, around that time. Can you recall, was it an RBKC housing line, a helpline? What sort of, or the RBKC offices that you telephoned?
I Googled the number, so it was their emergency accommodation line.
Had it not been for the police officer's intervention, do you believe that you would have been offered emergency accommodation that day?
No, I don't believe so.
Did you get accommodation for that night then?
I did, yes.
In your second statement at paragraph 30, just a little bit further down, you tell us that you went the next day to the St Clement's Janes Centre, where a lawyer from North Kensington Law Centre phoned RBKC on your behalf. Could I ask you firstly, why did you go to the St Clement's Janes Centre?
There was loads of messages about being able to go to St Clement's James Centre for some support, and everyone was gathering there. So if you needed any information from residents and any support, everyone was pretty much there if they weren't at Westway. I gravitated towards St Clement James as I went to Homework Club as a young girl, and it just felt right. It just felt that, yeah, if I was to go anywhere, it would be to St Clement James.
How did you know to go there? Was it through word of mouth?
Word of mouth, through messaging, yeah.
Had it not been for members of your community, would you have known where to go for help?
No.
As a result of going to the St Clement's Janes Centre and the assistance that you received there, what happened?
I was able to get accommodation closer, so it was in Hammersmith with a longer end date, so it didn't require me calling up the temporary accommodation line every day to find out where I would be going, as I wanted to go back to work, as work needed a lot of support. But I wouldn't be able to if I have to call up every day and kind of be moved to different hotels with a suitcase.
How would you describe the support you received from those at the St Clement Janes Centre?
Wonderful, as always. It was nice to see familiar faces. There was a sense of community that Westway was lacking, a warmth that Westway was definitely lacking, and familiar faces.
You were given accommodation, a room with a double bed which you and your mother shared. At that stage, did you mind sharing a bed with your mother?
No, at that stage it was at least we have somewhere to sleep every day and not having to rely on me relying on my friends or family that had no space.
Can you assist us with when you eventually did return home?
It was winter time. It was around maybe December. They had finally put a temporary gas canister because our gas and heating came from underneath the tower. So gas and heating was somewhat put back in to the flats. And as soon as that happened, we were able to go back in.
Ms Boujettif, I would like to ask you briefly about your experience whilst in the emergency accommodation. In your second statement at paragraph 35, you speak there of, you say, once we were settled into the hotel, we were drip-fed information about how we could get our meals and financial support. Is that right?
Yes.
Does it follow, therefore, that it was unclear to you about what support was available to you and how you could access it?
Yes.
You mention in this paragraph 35 that there was a disparity in how provisions for food were dealt with. Was it your experience that there was a lack of consistency in the treatment received by those affected by the fire?
Yes, there was inconsistencies. We weren't made any information available to us about what food could be provided or what money could be provided to buy any food. And I think at that point of the headache of trying to get accommodation, it was, we felt that it was, you know what, as long as we have somewhere to stay, we will just survive on what we can pay out from our own pocket. So we didn't actively look for any information on what food could be provided. The hotel did let us finally know that breakfast and dinner was provided by the hotel.
Did anyone from RBKC or the TMO visit the hotel to meet with residents and provide any information?
Initially, no. And then I was given a Hammersmith and City housing officer who would be my key worker, but that was after the initial 7 days.
Can you recall how long after the fire that was?
I would say 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks. But her being a Hammersmith and Fulham housing officer, she said that she was taken out of her job post, and she was completely honest and said, I have no real information to give you as she is not part of the borough. Sorry, go on.
Forgive me for interrupting, you carry on.
She did refer me to St Charles Therapy.
Could I just ask your key worker that you've mentioned, how often did you speak to your key worker?
I met her once, and then it was maybe 2 or 3 text messages. When I met with her, she was not because of she didn't want to be, but she just couldn't help. She was unhelpful. She was from Hammersmith and Fulham. She didn't have the connections with RBKC. She couldn't really answer any of my questions. And it just, again, felt like I am on my own and I just need to find out the information myself.
You mentioned that she referred you or gave you some information about where you could go. Was that for counselling support?
Yes.
Finally, Ms. Boujettif, I wanted to ask you if there was anything further that you would like to say to conclude your evidence regarding the impact of the fire or the treatment that you received in its immediate aftermath.
The sense of confusion and is the one thing that kind of I don't remember details and I don't remember dates, but I remember feelings, and it felt like when I'm looked at or when I go to ask for help, I'm made to feel that you can do it by yourself. At the time, I didn't have a vulnerable. I spoke English, and I'm thankfully healthy. So it felt like I was felt to feel that it was my responsibility to go and find accommodation, to find the information, and just sit there quietly until the information's given to you. This was all happening after having seen the tower on fire. So I don't think mental or emotional feelings were taken into consideration when you're faced with an RBKC representative and they're saying to you, you need to look at the news to find out what's going to happen to where you live. And being a walkway resident, it felt like we were always pushed to the side for many reasons, and I wasn't allowed back in, but some of the residents were. So it gave a huge confusion not only to the residents but to the officials, to the police officers, that some were allowed back in and some weren't. So that created kind of a push aside where you're a walkway resident. So the aftermath and how it was dealt with I can speak for a resident of the walkways, was very confusing and shambolic. And emotions and what I experienced will stay with me forever. That's all I have to say.
Those are all the questions I wanted to ask you. We're going to have a pause, I believe, to see if there are any questions from anyone else.
Yes, Mr. Boujettif. Well, at this stage, we have a short break to give people who are following the proceedings from other places an opportunity to suggest questions that perhaps we ought to put to you. So we'll break now. I would have thought just over 5 minutes is long enough, wouldn't you?
Yes.
We'll come back at 12:25 to see if there are any more questions. And while you're out of the room, I don't think you'll have a chance to talk to anyone about your evidence, but if you do, please avoid doing it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Would you go with the usher then, please? We'll come back at 12:25, but if for any reason you need more time, then just ask the usher to come and tell us. All right? Thank you very much. Would you ask Ms. Boujettif to come back in, please? Thank you. All right. Well, we'll see if there are more questions for you. Yes, Ms. Mullen.
Ms. Boujettif, there was one question arising. It's in regards to your emergency accommodation. You described being in hotel accommodation. What was your experience? What would happen at the end of each day?
With the long-term hotel, or
Was there a situation where you had to check out of a hotel?
yes,
Was that in the first few days after the fire?
yes, when I would have to call up every day for to see where I would be the next day.
And what was the process? Would you have to come out? Would you have to change hotels, or would you just have to confirm a room for the next night?
No, I would have to come out completely, give in the key, because I wasn't guaranteed that hotel.
Can you assist with how many days that went on for?
3 days.
Well, thank you, Ms. Boujettif. I think the only thing that's left for me to say is thank you very much for coming to give your evidence today. We appreciate that it may have been a difficult process for you, and we're grateful for your assistance.
And it's right that before you go, I should thank you very much on behalf of the panel for coming to tell us about your experiences. It was obviously a difficult thing for you to do in some respects, and I'm sorry about that. But it's been very helpful to us to hear what you have to tell us, and we're very grateful. Thank you very much indeed, and you're now free to go.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Malhotra. Now, we have another witness.
We do.
But we need to rise for a short time just to enable the usual arrangements to be made. Is
That's
that
right.
Good. Well, we'll do that, and you could ask the usher to come and find us as soon as you're ready.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mrs. Lum. Now you have another witness for us, I think.
Yes, can I please call Mrs. Hanan Cherbika?
Thank you. Good morning, Mrs. Cherbika.
Morning.
You're going to take the oath as well, I think, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
So you will find the Quran there, and could you hold it in your hand and read the words on the screen, please?
I swear by Allah that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Then do sit down, please. Make yourself comfortable. Yes, Mrs. Lam, when you're ready. Thank you.
Mrs. Cherbika, thank you for attending today to give evidence to assist the inquiry with its investigations.
Thank you.
By way of introduction, please try and keep your voice up when you're giving your answers so the transcriber over there can hear what you're saying. It also helps to say yes or no rather than nod, so we can capture it on the transcript. If any of my questions are unclear, let me know and I will rephrase it. And if at any point you need a break, we will accommodate that and just let us know. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
You've made two statements to the inquiry. The first is dated the 4th of April 2018, and if we could go to that, please. It's IWS 000000016. And if we could please turn to page 20 of that statement. Can you confirm that that is your signature?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. And you also made a second statement to the inquiry dated the 12th of February 2020. Can we please turn to that at IWS 00001286? And if we could please go to page 24 of that statement. Can you confirm that is your signature?
Yes, it is.
Have you had the opportunity to read those statements recently?
I have, yeah.
And can you confirm that the contents are true to the best of your knowledge?
They are.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you some background questions first. You were a resident of 208 Grenfell Walk at the time of the fire, where you lived with your husband and 3 children. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And is it right that you moved there in 2006, but in fact you'd lived in the area since 1993?
That's correct, yeah.
And in your statement, you explained that your family life was very centred around the estate. Is that right?
That's correct.
And as a result of how long you'd lived in the area, is it right to say that you knew a number of people that sadly passed away in the fire?
Yes.
And in particular, you were good friends with Fawzia El-Wahabi and her family. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, just take a moment to...
It's okay. All right.
All right?
Are you okay for me to continue?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you some questions about the early hours of the 14th of June. Is it right that you first became aware of the fire at around 10 to 1 in the morning when your husband came home?
Yes.
And when you became aware that the fire was serious, is it right that you decided to leave with your children and take them to your mother's house, who lives about 10 minutes away?
Yes.
And once you left your home, how would you describe the scene?
Chaotic. Panic.
And if it helps, in paragraph 39 of your first statement, you say, Grenfell Walk was just packed, everybody was screaming hysterically. Is that right?
Yes.
And at this point, what was going through your mind?
Are my children's friends still inside? So I can remember.
And is it right that after dropping your children off, you returned to the area?
Yes.
And did you go back to your flat to try and pick up some things?
I did, yes.
And did you then leave your flat?
Yes.
Once you were outside, did you notice anyone from the RBKC or the TMO or any other official presence providing any information or support?
No.
I'm going to turn to ask you about some of the rest centres that you visited, and your search for people that were missing.
Okay.
Is it right to say that you stayed at the scene because you wanted to try and find your friend Fawzia Al-Wahabi and her family?
That's correct, yes.
And you became aware that local centres and mosques were opening.
Yes.
And is it right that the first place you went to was the Harrow Club?
Yes.
And at the Harrow Club, you spoke to a youth worker about your friends, and is it right that he put the names down on a list?
That's correct.
Do you remember what that list was?
It was a plain white piece of paper with columns with name, address, what floor they lived on, and how we'd seen them. And then they were just filling it out as everyone was giving information to them.
Did you understand that to be a list being pulled together by the community or an official list?
No, from the community.
I think you mentioned in your statement that there was somebody from the British Red Cross at the Harrow Club. Do you remember speaking to anybody from the British Red Cross?
Not at the Harrow Club, no. I don't remember. May have been.
Do you remember seeing anybody from RBKC or the TMO at the Harrow Club?
No.
How would you describe the atmosphere whilst you were at the Harrow Club?
A lot of confusion. Not knowing where people were going, why they were there. Yeah.
Okay. And you say in your statement that after the Harrow Club you went to the St Clement's Church, is that right?
Yes.
And in terms of the time, would you say that that was still in the early hours at about 4 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
And as you were going from the Harrow Club to the St Clement's Church, how would you describe what was going on in the streets?
There, I remember the roads packed with ambulances, fire services, local residents. Also remember media. Yeah.
Okay. And when you arrived at the St Clement's Church, what was going on there?
When I walked in, two people came towards myself and my husband, and they asked if I was from the tower. I said no, I was from Grenfell Walk. Then they said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" I offered refreshments. Then they offered us a seat, and I don't remember. I felt.
Okay. And it might help if I take you to paragraph 56 of your first witness statement, please. It will appear on your screen in just a second. So towards the bottom of that paragraph, it says, "We went into the church and the events of the night must have shown on my face because the vicar or the priest offered to make me a hot drink and offered me a blanket. I told him that I was looking for my friend. He checked the list and Fawzia's family name was already on it." So just asking you about that list.
I'm sorry, I can't see where I'm reading it from.
Is it on your screen now?
There is, yeah.
Perhaps should we just
Which
pick it
one?
up at the bottom of the previous page,
Yeah.
so we can read into the paragraph?
Yes, please. So if we're looking at the last sentence on paragraph 56, which
Okay.
starts with "we went into,"
Yeah.
can you see that, yeah?
Yeah.
"We went into the church and the events of the night must have shown on my face because the vicar or the priest, he was wearing a dog collar, offered to make me a hot drink and offered me a blanket. I told him that I was looking for my friend. He checked the list and Fawzia's family name was already on it." Can you see that?
Yes, yeah.
So just to ask you about that list, did you understand that to be a list of safe and missing residents?
To be honest with you, I can't remember that list.
Okay.
But if I've said it here, then it probably wasn't it. But at this moment, I can't remember.
That's fine, thank you. Do you remember seeing anyone from the TMO at St Clement's Church recording details of people coming in to the centre?
Never. No.
Do you remember seeing anybody from RBKC at St Clement's Church?
No.
Is it right then that you then tried to go to the rugby club after the St Clement's Church?
Yes.
And what did you want to do when you got to the rugby club?
The same as I wanted to do when I went to Harrow Club, to see if they'd found anything, if they heard anything, and give information if I had anything, if I heard anything on the way.
And is it right that you weren't allowed into the rugby club because you weren't a Tower resident?
That's correct.
How did that make you feel not being allowed in at that time?
I was quite disappointed with them, to be honest with you, because the person I was speaking to knows my son used to play football with them for many years, and they know where I live, and I kind of felt like, I understand I'm not a survivor, I didn't come out of the tower, but you know me, you know where I live, you know that I am homeless, and you've closed the door on my face, and it was really hard to take that. And then when I go in, I say I'm a survivor, because I'm not. But I just didn't know what to do. I don't know what I was doing at that time, and I just felt really rejected by somebody that knew me and my family personally.
Yeah. Thank you. And you later went on to other rest centres, including the Westway Centre and the Latimer Christian Centre. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell us what your experience was of the support at the Latimer Christian Centre, please?
The Latimer Christian Centre, I didn't go inside. I was only outside, I think, as I can recall. So I just went there to go and look for one of my neighbours. I knew had gone there for shelter.
Okay, thank you. And if I could take you to paragraph 130 of your second witness statement, please, and it will appear on your screen again. And just starting with paragraph 130, you say, on the night of the fire, I had to physically go around youth clubs and churches to try and find out if my friends and kids that were in the tower and managed to get out. You continue, I tried to find out about where they were by ringing up friends, asking around my mum's neighbours. It felt like that there was no place to obtain information about missing people, and if there was, it was not easily accessible to me. It felt like a war zone. Is that right?
Yes.
In all of the rest centres that you attended, were you able to find any information about your friends?
No.
Were you aware of some sort of centralised system of official information about those that were missing?
No.
I'm going to ask you now about your experience at the Westway Centre. And if I can take you, please, to paragraph 47 of your second witness statement. And you say, I knew by word of mouth that the Westway was open, so when we went there, but they were stopping us from entering because we were not from the tower. You continue to say, I remember the people from the Red Cross asked us for our ID to make sure we were living in the tower. I could not believe it. They told us that we could not go in unless we were from the tower. I was wearing my mum's clothes because I had left everything in Grenfell Walk. I had lost my house, I had lost everything, and they were telling me that living on Grenfell Walk was not enough to receive help. Is that right?
Yes.
Just want to ask you a few questions about this passage, if that's okay. Do you remember what time it was that you visited the Westway Centre?
I don't. I just remember being in daylight. I don't remember what time.
Okay. And in this passage, you say they. When you say they stopped us entering, who are you referring to?
There was a table set up outside the Westway, and there was about 3 or 4 people standing there. So when I'm saying they, I'm assuming I was talking about the people behind the desk.
And do you know whether those people were from the RBKC?
No, I believe they were from the Red Cross. They had badges or lanyards on I'm not sure which one, but I remember seeing the Red Cross there.
Okay. And once you were denied entry, how did you feel at that point?
Again, rejected. Just dead end all the time, and it was quite tiring to have to repeat yourself and stress to them that Grenfell Walk had been evacuated. Yeah.
Now, you told us that the people at the desk were from the British Red Cross, but do you remember seeing, even in the area that you were in, anybody from RBKC or the TMO
No.
at the Westway Centre?
No.
Okay. Were there other evacuated residents from properties surrounding the tower also trying to gain access to the Westway Centre when you were there?
I remember seeing people around outside Westway. I don't remember seeing anybody at the desk, so I'm assuming they probably wanted to get in as well, but I don't know. I'm just assuming.
And in your statement at paragraph 49, we can go to it if you want to, but you say you were eventually let into the Westway Centre. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What changed? How were you able to get into the centre?
I believe this at this point was another day, or later on in the day. I don't know what changed. I don't know.
Do you remember being given a wristband to identify you to get into the Westway Centre?
I do, yes.
How did you feel about having to wear a wristband to get into the centre?
It was quite, I don't know if degrading is the right word to use, but it was embarrassing because it kind of singled you out.
Yeah. All right. If we could go to paragraph 51, please, of your second statement. You say the Westway was literally an emergency shelter with a line of beds. Hisham, who's your husband, is that right?
Yes.
Was there during the day looking after our youngest child, trying to get him asleep, and he took pictures. And I'd like to take you to one of those pictures, please. It's Exhibit HC29, available at IWS 0000060, please. Is that the picture as far as... Are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine, sorry.
Take a moment. There's absolutely no pressure of time, okay?
Go ahead.
You okay for me to continue?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay. Is this a picture of the Westway Centre?
It is, yes.
And as someone who had been evacuated from your home, what was your experience of the Westway Centre as somewhere that was supposed to offer support and relief?
I couldn't believe that this was happening. I remember walking in thinking, it looks like something like you see on TV. Nothing is going to happen. Like nothing. This doesn't happen here. I don't know.
Thank you. Do you remember what services were available at the Westway Centre? We can take the image off the screen now, thank you.
At that point,
Yes.
I don't remember there being any services. I just remember them having beds there, and having, like, there was loads of donations on the floor, clothes, food on the tables, but that's it. Nothing official.
If I can take you, please, to paragraph 52 of your second witness statement. You say, I felt like I was fighting to let them understand who I was. I felt like it was a constant battle with them to explain to them where I was from and why I had the right to be there. Again, when you say them, who are you referring to?
The same people.
British Red Cross?
Yes.
Did you feel like you were being treated differently because you were a Walkway resident?
I did, yes.
In what way do you feel you were treated differently?
I don't want this to sound like I'm disrespecting survivors or the bereaved, but to them, I just felt like we didn't matter because we didn't come out of the tower and we didn't lose anybody, family. So it
Thank you. And did you receive any support or information from RBKC or the TMO whilst at the Westway Centre?
no.
Were you told at any point at the Westway Centre that as an evacuated resident, you were able to stay there?
On this day.
On the 14th?
Yeah, no.
Were you later told that in the first week?
Probably, but I can't recall. But probably, yeah.
Okay. Did anyone advise you that because you had young children, you were entitled to emergency hotel accommodation?
No.
Did you return to the Westway Centre in the days that followed in that first week?
I did, yes.
And do you feel that the services improved over the course of that week?
Eventually, but I don't know if it was on the same week. I don't know if it was within that week, but the services improved because they started bringing people from housing and all the other information that you needed. But on the week, I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm about to move on to a new topic. I'm
Yes.
happy to continue, but there is 5 minutes to the lunch break.
You've got a little way to go still, haven't you?
I do, yes.
Yes. Well, I'm in your hands. Would you rather start that new topic after lunch?
Yes, please.
All right. Well, that's what we'll do then. Ms. Cherbika, we need to break soon, about now, so that we can all get some lunch, at least those of us who are able to have some lunch.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid there's a little bit further to go with your evidence, so we're going to have to ask you to come back this afternoon.
Okay.
We'll break now. We'll resume, please, at 2:00. And as I've said to all the other witnesses who started giving evidence and then had to break off, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence while you're out of the room.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Would you go with the usher then?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 2:00 then, please.
Thank you.